Welcome to the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show, everybody. It is September the 8th, and it is UFC Friday. And on UFC Friday, we are talking UFC 293, and we are going to end it with a little bit of a recap on UFC Paris. That'll kind of depend on how much time we have left, because the large majority of the show will obviously be dedicated to the pay-per-view. Because obviously that is the most important. But before we break into the fights themselves, Jerry, how you doing today?
No complaints. Really excited to watch these fights tomorrow. I have work, but I'm working a double, so I get off early. I'll be home in time to watch at least the last two fights. And really, we've looked at this card, we've spoken about it off camera, and those are the only two that really matter at the end of the day. The two big ones, Tai Tuivasa, Alexander Volkov, Izzy Adesanya, and Sean Strickland. We'll say, before we hop into it, that press conference, fireworks. So much fun. If you guys have a chance to go back, watch some of the highlights from that, because it was just pure entertainment from get-go.
Yeah, that press conference, the collection of people they put on that stage is a wild collection of people. Israel Adesanya says wild stuff. Sean Strickland says wild stuff. Tai Tuivasa, fan favorite. Manel Kape acted like a wild man, which provided some quality entertainment. A little splash of Anton the Pleasure Man Turkali and Tyson Pedro. It was you don't see many press conferences like it, I'll just say that.
No, not at all. The only one I can remember really watching and being wilded about was kind of that Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo. They were going at it, but when you have this many characters on the stage together, it's just comedy waiting to happen.
Yep, and it provided. I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was as good as the exchange we got from Sean and Izzy the first time around, but I think as a whole, this one might have been a little bit better than the first press conference because it was a little bit more directed towards those two. But the first exchange we got towards Izzy and Sean, which was, I don't remember the exact card number, but it was when Sean fought Pereira. That ended up being a pretty good exchange that they had. But press conference did not disappoint in my opinion.
I will say the only thing I was a little disappointed. I was kind of expecting a little more back and forth from Izzy. It seemed like Sean was the one talking the most, and Izzy got more heated when Manuel Kape threw something at his teammate Kai Kara France, and the crowd got a water bottle, chucked it at him. Brings me reminders of Jordan Bennington throwing a water bottle at Nazim Kadri in the Avs Stanley Cup run a couple years ago. So very entertaining stuff. But
Connor did that as well. I think Connor and Nate like chucking water bottles around.
That's right.
So took a page out of their playbook. Accurate toss as well is the underrated part of that. Nearly Kai Kara France had to like actively avoid it. So there's a rocket on Manel Kape's arm, and we'll get on this later, but he's got some power in that arm when it comes to fighting as well. So
Trey, I like it. No
idea. Idea.
All we know, Trey, and I'm sure you can agree on this, Bennington is one of the worst people in hockey. No one likes him, especially as an Avs fan. It's loved watching him get that frustrated and end up getting out that series. So good stuff there.
And then into the fights. This first fight, we'll start at the main event: Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland. This is an interesting fight because it wasn't necessarily the fight that we thought we were going to get. It's terrible. This wasn't necessarily the fight that we thought we were going to get. We thought it was going to be Dricus du Plessis. He is not able to make the turnaround. He fought in the end of July, so it was a little bit optimistic, thinking he could be back in the first week of September for a title fight. So that fight does not happen. Instead, we have Sean Strickland. Sean's the highest-ranked guy that Adesanya has not fought outside of du Plessis, so it makes a little bit of sense there. Sean also won his last two fights. So before we get into the fight itself, Jerry, what do you make of Sean being the one in the spot and getting this opportunity against Izzy?
Honestly, first I'll start with saying du Plessis kind of fumbled the bag there. I know it was a quick turnaround, but he seemed confident after the fight. They had all that back and forth and all that stuff about being the first African champion and all that. But I mean, I don't dislike Sean Strickland getting it. We've seen what happens when Izzy fights Vettori. We've seen what happens when he fights Cannonier. Fought Bobby Knuckles recently as well. And we see how that's ended up. Last time those two fought in Australia was when Izzy got the belt. So I just think it's nice to see a change of pace. We've talked about this in other divisions at times as well. It's nice to see fresh faces. I know for me personally, the flyweight division in the men's side, it was 4 straight fights with the same 2 guys. It was nice to finally get a switch up, and now we'll get even more of a switch up there. But it's nice to see someone like I think Sean Strickland he brings character to it as well. Obviously the press conference, but he's an entertaining style of fighter. Do I think he's necessarily has the stuff to beat Izzy? Probably not. We'll get into more of that in a little bit, but I like it. The fact that he went and fought Pereira and now is fighting Izzy, those are the 2 toughest guys in that division, I'd say now, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we will see a Sean Strickland masterclass and he'll get the upset.
Yeah, and to your point, I'm a big fan of the parody as well. When you just look at the state of the sport, we've seen a ton of rematches and a ton of trilogies recently, and even the 4 fights, like you mentioned in the flyweight division, we got 4 fights there. We got 3 fights between Volk and Holloway. We got 2 fights between Yan and Sterling. We're getting a rematch with Makachev and Oliveira, Usman Covington, Usman Edwards, Adesanya, Pereira. So it's like there have been rematches and trilogies. Next week we have a rematch with Grasso and Shevchenko. So it's like I like having a new face in there as well, because I feel like we have just been we've been seeing the same fights. And not to say that you shouldn't have booked those fights, but it is nice now to take an opportunity to get a new fight out there, because I do think the other name that could have replaced Duplessis is Cannonier. And Cannonier, in all honesty, more deserving. Yeah, we're gonna get into that here in a second, Trey. But I'm with you. I don't think he really has that much of a chance. But Cannonier, he had a couple really good fights. Beat Strickland. A lot of people don't like that decision. I think Cannonier won that fight. Cannonier beat the absolute breaks off of Marvin Vettori. So Cannonier's look good, but the first fight with Izzy, really, really disappointed. So you have to really earn that rematch, and he probably hasn't done that yet. So moving over to the fight itself, I'll swing this over to you first, Jerry. But we've kind of danced around this a little bit already. I think, you've said it, I've said it, Trey has said it. Doesn't feel like Sean has a great chance in this matchup. How do you feel?
No, I mean, I think the only way he has any shot of really winning it is if he gets a couple lucky strikes and ends up knocking Izzy out, kind of like how we saw Alex Pereira do it. Does not have nearly the power Alex Pereira had, so that's a big knock against him. And Izzy is that guy. He has so much skill on the feet. You were saying you even bet on him to get a submission potentially. That he does have that slight ground advantage if need be, I would say. I just don't see any way Izzy doesn't win this fight. I think he'll get a finish as well, and it's just his length he uses well. He has his different style. He can punch, he can kick. It's that kickboxing background for him that he's done. And there's also the fact that he's kind of trained all over. I know he's advertising himself as the Chinese fighter this weekend, wearing his red shorts. Those don't know, he's represented Nigeria, China in the past, New Zealand. So man of the world, as he was saying in the pressers recently. But I just don't see anything Strickland really has for him, outside of maybe a couple lucky shots that could knock the lights out of him.
Yeah, and when I look at this, I see 2 very plausible strategies for Strickland, and a third that's kind of less plausible, and one that he may not go to. But the 2 striking strategies that I could see from Sean, the first being him being really, really aggressive and really working to get in Adesanya's face. And that recklessness is probably what I expect him to do, because not many guys look to bring the fight to Adesanya like that. A lot of guys like to play it a little bit more technical. But if he brings the fight to Adesanya, I really struggle seeing him to win that type of fight, because Adesanya is a great counter striker, and he's very elusive in the pocket. look at what he did against Robert Whitaker. He practically knocked Whitaker out twice. In all fairness, got him once at the end of the first round, and then again in the beginning of the second. And it's because Rob entered the pocket, and Adesanya is great at avoiding the shots in the pocket, dipping under them. Really maneuvering his body and chin to avoid those shots and still be in a position to return with counters. Pereira got over aggressive in the second fight, in the second MMA fight, gets knocked out. So I think if Sean gets really aggressive, Izzy's going to put the hands on him and get the knockout there. If Sean plays a little bit more tactical, think maybe Jared Cannonier tried to be a little bit more tactical in moments of that fight. But at that point, I just see I just see Izzy kicking him in the leg until he's struggling to stand on the leg. If he kicks him in the lead leg enough, that jab of Strickland's gone. There goes your best weapon, and then it's just Izzy picking him apart with kicks to body, head. He's going to start whipping in that question mark kick. He'll start landing that jab, and he'll start entering in the pocket, landing some hooks. So at that point, if he fights technical, I just think he gets picked apart. So I think it's which way do you want to go out for Strickland at this point. And I don't like Strickland's defense either. If you watch Strickland and you watch the fight with Pereira or any other fight, the way that he moves his hands is like he tries to block shots by like finding them and then swatting at them like this, and he's moving these hands all around. And he drops his hands low, brings them high. He's got so much erratic hand movement that it only takes an elite striker one shot to put him down. And that's why Pereira beat him. And I don't know that he made the improvement from that fight to this fight to really change anything. If he grapples, maybe he has a chance, but I think we know enough about Sean Strickland that he's not going to come in here and grapple. So that would be the last kind of thing he could do. But once again, I don't think that's necessarily the game plan. And Adesanya does have some underrated submissions. Wrestling probably not up to par where you want it to be, but the submissions fairly underrated and could prevent some struggles, especially with the long arms, long legs. So, yeah, I just think wherever this fight goes, however we play this fight, Izzy's gonna get it done.
Yeah, two things I want to kind of bounce off of from what you just said. One of the underrated things in UFC, and you mentioned it, was Izzy's defense and the defensive boxing in the pocket. You hear all the time in actual boxing. You hear Floyd Mayweather, best defensive boxer. Tyson Fury now, great defensive boxer. Izzy's a great defensive fighter. He finds ways to move around, and he's just so, I'd say, nimble on his feet and just slides around. It seems like you're swinging it air. And that's the other thing, going the other way, where you're saying Sean Strickland's erratic, kind of throwing his hands around, whereas Pereira has, I would say, probably more power than Izzy. Izzy is one of the most precise strikers we've probably ever seen in the UFC. And he finds those little holes, and it doesn't take much for him to just throw his punches and kicks, pinpoint precision. And that could be the end of Sean Strickland if that's happening, and he's just getting pieced up by bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to that point as well, when you look at how Pereira beat Izzy, he was able to do it because he kicked him in the leg for 4 rounds, and he has one of the best leg kicks in the sport. When he lets that leg kick go and throws it 100%, he does serious damage. But Sean does not win the leg kick battle against practically anybody. So now we're giving him this fight against Izzy, and Sean doesn't throw the leg kicks to break down his movement, and Sean doesn't defend the leg kick, so he'll be the one getting broken down at the legs. So yeah, it's just every single thing that I logically think of what if Sean does this? Then Izzy does that and he wins. You know what I mean? So there's this constant push and pull of trying to make a game plan for Strickland. And based on his skills, you really don't get one that you would find success with. So my prediction, the preview is not out yet. Garrett will have that done today, I'm sure. But my prediction, I said round 4 TKO because I think he picks him apart before landing the big shot late. So I will just throw that out there as well. So yeah, I think we're all in agreement here, and I'd be very surprised if anyone takes the Strickland upset in our preview. But I don't know who Garrett and Anthony are picking yet. So maybe they surprise us.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have a 3rd round TKO by Izzy. I think, like you said, he's going to piece him up in the first couple rounds, and I think Strickland will get a little disgruntled after being pieced up for 2 rounds, that he'll throw something stupid, and Izzy will just step up, land a kick, land a punch, and it'll be lights out for him one way or another. I
Mhm.
do want to ask you, because Sean Strickland's one of the more entertaining characters, and I'm sure you saw he said if he wins the title belt, he's going to just auction it off, just sell it. What kind of champion do you think he would be? Do you think he'd be one of the like really fun, entertaining champions if he gets it? Because he talks the talk a lot.
Yeah, I would. What kind of champion would he be? Well, I'll just start that with I don't think he would be champion for very long. So I'll say a short champion. Whether it be the Adesanya rematch gets him, whether it be Driscus, Chimaev, Whitaker, Cannonier. Yeah, like Strickland being a champion would be an absolute shock. And if he does get that belt, I have a really hard time seeing a single title defense,
Yeah.
unless the UFC goes the Michael Bisping route. Michael Bisping won that belt, and he got the Dan Henderson fight, which was a fight he could win and a fight that could sell pay-per-views. So unless the UFC really throws Sean a lob of a fight that he could win at a high clip that they know will sell pay-per-views, maybe that's how he gets the title defense. But with that being said, I think in my mind, who's that fighter? What's that fight?
I don't
I
see
don't
him.
I don't have it, can't think of it. So I think he'd be a zero defense champ, and the short while that he is a champion would be probably madness. Would probably be the best way to describe it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Realistically, I don't see anyone in that top 6. You can even throw Hamzat in the mix because he will be making his middleweight debut against Paulo Costa at some point. You would think
Next month,
next month. I don't. Yeah, I had seen things that maybe that fight was off, but
full go,
no,
full go.
we'll go even better then. I don't see him beating any of those guys. Whether it's Drew Duplessis, Bobby Knuckles, Jared Cannonier, Vittori, the other 2 guys I mentioned. I just don't see it. Doesn't have the skills to do it. Doesn't have the power to do it. So
Yeah. Then that'll unless you have anything else you want to throw out there for Adesanya Strickland, I think I've got all my thoughts off my
yeah,
chest, and I think
give
we are
me
in agreement.
give me 15 seconds. My computer suddenly went from 50% to 20%. I'm gonna throw
All
a
right,
treadmill on this real quick.
all
Sorry.
right. I will buy time as you find your computer charger. So well, Jerry grabs his computer charger. I will shamelessly plug the UFC content at Vendetta. Vendetta Sports Media, we're doing streams every Friday for the UFC, previews, recaps, news, just depending on what is hot that week. And then in addition to that, we obviously have the UFC news articles, UFC previews, UFC best bets, and very timely here this week, the UFC film study was on Tai Tuivasa. We're going to talk about here in a second. So make sure to check that out on the main channel for Vendetta Sports Media. Tai Tuivasa film study that is out there, and I got that out yesterday. So make sure you check that out. Now, Jerry, you're back, and let's swing it right back over to the man himself, Tai Tuivasa, in the co-main event, taking on Alexander Volkov. Volkov, one of the biggest guys in the division, 6'7". Tuivasa, I believe, is 6'2" off the top of my head. 2 heavyweight strikers. What do you make of this matchup?
Power. Power is the one word I'm gonna use to sum it up. These 2 guys, knockout experts. It either seems, especially in Tuivasa's case recently, he either knocks out his opponent or gets put on his butt and his back himself. One way or another, I don't see this fight realistically lasting more than 2.5 rounds. Probably going to bet the under on that because one way or another. And I know Tuivasa, last time he fought in front of this Australia crowd was in 2019. Lost that one by submission. He's going to be looking to get that back, and he just has the excitement around him. Alexander Volkov, 2 straight knockout wins after being submitted by Tom Aspinall. Tuivasa, 2-fight losing streak, but it's not necessarily that surprising when you look at who he fought. 2 guys, Cyril Gahn and Sergey Pavlovich. God, every time. It still trips me up, even though I know how it is. One way or another, those 2 guys are tied ranked number 1 in the heavyweight division behind the champion John Jones and ahead of his upcoming opponent Stipe Miocic. So not bad losses, not necessarily surprising losses. It's going to be interesting to see how Tuivasa does rebound because it's been last time he fought was December last year. So he's had quite a bit of time off.
Yeah, and the time off I think is some you look at time off I think on a fight by fight basis.
Hmm.
And for Tuivasa, I think the time off was much needed. Just based on his two performances, his two losses like you mentioned, both knockout losses. The Gane fight was more of an accumulation of shots to the body and the head. The Pavlich fight was a blitzing of big shots to the head. So I think the time off is a positive for Tuivasa in this one, just because you can't just keep taking damage and keep running yourself out there without giving your brain a break. So I think that was very beneficial for him, and I'm interested to see how that plays out here. And this fight itself is a very interesting one to me personally because I see a lot of different paths for this fight, and I begin this with Volkov's front kicks, and Volkov has great body work, and we just watched Tai Tuivasa get obliterated to the body against Cyril Gane, and Tai is very weak to the body. If you watch the film study, the very first weakness I pointed out and went in depth in was his weakness to the body. Doesn't defend the shots to the body well. He doesn't take the shots to the body well, and he will begin to overcompensate and leave openings to the head. So all things considered, Volkov, a guy that can do work to the body, presents Tuivasa with a lot of issues. However, if you look at the odds on this fight, it's like minus 250 Volkov. And that like I picked Volkov for all the reasons I mentioned. But I put Tuivasa in best bets, and I don't like to put guys in best bets that I don't pick to win. But these odds, like, it's ridiculous to me that we can't believe that Tai Tuivasa can land the one shot. You know, all it takes is Volkov getting tired, getting labored. All of a sudden, he can't throw kicks at a high rate, which we've seen in the past if his kicks slow down as the fight goes later. And strangely, I think Tuivasa will do better in the later rounds. And it only takes Tuivasa one shot to land the knockout. He's a top 3 power puncher in the heavyweight division. And we've seen Volkov, who, in theory, should never let big power punchers get into the pocket because of his length. We've seen him against Derek Lewis give that position up. We've seen him let Derek Lewis into the pocket in a fight that Volkov was winning, and that mistake cost him the fight. So it's like, in theory, Volkov should win, but one mistake is just absolutely fight ending, and it's for one mistake to be priced at plus 200 for Tuivasa to find and capitalize on one mistake, I think is a little bit crazy. So I guess to end my long drawn out rant here, but to me, I think Volkov wins because of those front kicks and the body shots. But for everyone to be so overly confident that we can't see it going another way, I think is a little bit crazy.
No, I'm with you on that. It is. I was surprised. We were looking at the odds before we started the show, and the fact that it was plus 200 kind of surprised both of us to an extent. I know we'd been looking at it in the past, but still, it just doesn't seem like any heavyweight fight where there's power punchers involved should be that big of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because all it takes is one punch in the heavyweight division. His nickname is Bam Bam Tai Tuivasa for a reason. Comes in, all it takes is one punch to send someone down. We saw that with Derek Lewis. Saw that with Sakai and Greg Hardy. And I took Tuivasa in our predictions and preview, mostly because I think he will be at his home in Sydney. It's his home crowd, home country, representing them, fighting there, like I said, for the first time in 4 years. He's going to have that whole crowd behind him, and I think he's going to come out swinging. And I think he'll be a little more prepared for the body kicks. I'm thinking he would have learned something from that Gane fight, since that was over a year ago now, and it's gonna be exciting. I do have Tuivasa getting a finish. I have him winning by KO or TKO at some point in the fight. I don't exactly have an exact round because I just can see it being one of those one punch finishes that he'll send Volkov down and quickly jump and land some hammer fists, some ground and pound, and call it a night.
Yeah, and sorry, I was while you were talking, I was listening, but I looked Tuivasa's betting history, and he was a plus 162 dog against Derek Lewis. So we have seen him cash in this price range before. So it is not completely unreasonable to expect him to do it again. And Volkov doesn't grapple as well, which in that regard, it's a nice matchup for Ty. You know, the front kicks and the length, not a good matchup, but the no grappling aspect of Volkov's game is, or I should word it as he doesn't offensively grapple. Um, that is a big positive for Tuivasa. He does not have to worry about that. And that gives him, you know, every second of this 15-minute fight, I assume, is going to be on the feet, which gives him even a longer span of time to try and find that knockout shot, which can, like, once again, I'm picking Volkov, but when you give Tuivasa 15 minutes on the feet, you can't be shocked if he finds the knockout shot. And you're more confident in it than I am. You picked it. But it's like, I just think I've been absolutely befuddled all week with what these betting odds have looked like, and I think that's even gotten a little bit wider in the on the Volkov side. Excuse me, it's even gone further in that direction. So I've been really surprised with how many people are so confident that Volkov wins this fight, and I've been struggling to see it all week at a high clip. That is, I think Volkov wins, but
I mean,
the clip is crazy.
what surprises me as well is obviously, like we said, Tuivasa plus 200 to win the overall fight. He's plus 300 to win by KO TKO.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well just sprinkle some money on that instead of going with him just straight up, because if he wins straight up, he's not going to go to a decision. I just don't see that happening. He's going to win by that KO or TKO, so that's where the money could be made.
Yep.
Also, you were saying lack of grappling. Are we going to see a shock and Tai Tuivasa cashes plus 2,500 by submission?
I would be very surprised if the 2,500 on Tuivasa submission cashes. But I told Jerry this before the show. I took 2 long shots on this card. The Adesanya sub. Geez, stuttered 8 times trying to say that. The Adesanya sub plus 1,600, just in case Sean grapples, and the Tai Tuivasa round 3 KO. We saw Volkov trip up in round 3. Tai Tuivasa, if those kicks slow down, the round 3 Tuivasa KO plus 2,200. Obviously, those are long bombs, so don't go out there and put your bank account on it. But if you're having fun with some long shots, those are my two long balls for the week. I like that the round 3 KO a lot more than the sub. I will say that.
I'm looking at that right now. Really nice odds there. I might have to sprinkle something on that as well.
Sprinkles only.
Just a little luck.
Yeah. So we covered just about every angle of this fight. So let's continue to slide down the card. And this fight, another fight that was not originally booked to take place. We have Manel Kape versus Felipe dos Santos. It's supposed to be Manel Kape versus Kai France. That was a great fight. That was a banger. That was a potential title eliminator, or that's maybe a little overly optimistic. Maybe the winner had to get one more. Regardless, that's right at the top of the division. Now we're seeing Manel Kape, who is a top 10 flyweight, take on UFC debutant Felipe dos Santos, who he was supposed to fight on Contender Series 2 weeks ago. His opponent missed weight by like 10 pounds, so they scrap his Contender Series fight, and they say, lucky you, Kai France just pulled out. You get to fight on a pay-per-view, and you are in the middle of the main card. So Felipe dos Santos finds himself in a great spot here. He is fighting an uphill battle, though, against a very good fighter, Manel Kape. Jerry, what are your thoughts on this flyweight scrap?
I think it's tough one to make your debut against.
Yeah.
It's because we've seen Kape win in many different ways. He has the only flying knee in flyweight history, flying knee knockout
over Ode Osborne. That was violent.
And that's the thing that worries me about this fight is Kape is a tough dude, and he is a very violent fighter. He's coming out swinging, coming out kicking, might even see another flying knee attempt. And I think for a guy making your debut, I know he's a Muay Thai fighter in his background, so he has kind of some of that. hands, feet, knees, elbow stuff, but it's different being 22 and expecting to have to fight to get into the UFC. And then suddenly it's, oh, I'm fighting the number 10 guy in the world on the middleweight point of the pay per view. That puts extra pressure on him. Yet at the same time, and this is something I was going to say with possibly Sean Strickland earlier, is they have nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of makes him a little potentially more dangerous. I just don't see anything but Cobb winning this one.
Yeah, and for a little bit of a background for anyone who does not know much about Felipe dos Santos, which I assume is 99% of the people who are watching on Saturday, I opened up the film, I watched some film. You turn on the film, and there's one fight where he's got blue hair. There's another fight where he's got the dyed blonde hair, and he's got the Shuto Box de Lima tattoo, and he trains over at Shuto Box with Charles Oliveira and the crew there. And every single one of those guys fights practically the same. Small differences in skills between most of them. Obviously, they're different people, but they come out of the box the same fighter. They all, whether it be they all look the same. The blonde hair, the tattoos. Side note: there must be some great tattoo parlors in Brazil.
Oh,
You,
has to be.
you get some guys from America with some real shit tattoos every week. And then all of a sudden, these Brazilians come in. Every single one has a sick arm sleeve or a sick back tat or a sick chest piece. So there's got to be some nice barbers, tattoo artists in Brazil.
Hey, there we go. Anthony hit the join
And
part.
shout out Anthony for hopping in the stream.
No, I'm looking.
We are at we're talking about Manal Cop and Felipe dos Santos here. Um, so, uh, so Dos Santos, Shuto Box Diego Lima guy fights exactly like him. Tall stance, hands up, elbows, knees. But in this fight, I am just seeing Manel Cop, picking him apart with counter shots as he comes in and throws wildly like these Shuto Box guys do. So I think Cop is going to land some big shots early. Anthony, shout out for joining in here.
Yeah.
How about you give us a run down of how you see the first two fights on the card going, and then your opinion on the Cop and Felipe dos Santos fight. A little bit
Okay.
of
I'll go. Well, the Tyson Pedro.
Oh, no.
I've seen.
We started at the main event.
We start with Izzy.
Oh,
and-
okay. Okay, perfect. Because I was like, I don't really want to talk about Tyson Pedro. I mean, I'm sure, kind of like you said, on your best bets article too. But I think Izzy's just by knockout, probably first or second round. I look at it the same way as the Alex Pereira fight a little bit. Both counter strikers. I know he'll do it a little bit differently, but I just can't imagine Sean has like the facilities to hang with Izzy in any way. And maybe that's being too biased to Izzy, and maybe I'm too much of a Sean Strickland hater. But maybe he can get the hands going a little bit. But I just don't. I just feel like, kind of like with the Alex fight again, his strengths are going to play right into Izzy's, and so I see an early knockout in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been curious on this one. I at first just saw the two names, picked Ty Tuivasa by knockout, especially where the fight's at, and then I thought about it. Because I noticed that I picked like 5 knockouts in a row on all 5 main cards, or all 5 fights, and I've never done that. So I was like, something's wrong here. So then, I had asked my friend, and they because Volkov's, he's a good fighter. He's not my favorite too, but he does actually win, and I've lost to him betting against him a couple times. So maybe if he can, keep the distance and poke away and probably kind of like that Derek Lewis fight, maybe not get caught by that big bomb towards the end of the fight. I think he should be able to have this. But I do like Tuivasa's puncher's chance. And I think he was the one that was he plus 300?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say I see it both ways. And I think it'd be fun to root for the Tai Tuivasa big bomb to happen at some point. but the right way the fight should probably play out is Volkov just kind of picks him apart from the outside, and and has the endurance to keep it up the whole fight too for 3 rounds. So I'd say probably most likely Volkov decision.
Yeah. Your thoughts pretty much aligned with a lot of mine and Jerry's. And in the main event, Trey was tuning in as well, or chiming in as well in the chat, and not a lot of Sean Strickland love. So I think we're going to be in a spot on the preview here where all four of us have Izzy winning by KO, which
Yeah.
I honestly have to go back and look through the spreadsheet of all of our picks. But I think off the top of my head, just from not crunching any numbers, but I think when we all line up 4 ways on a pick, I think it usually ends well. I'd have to crunch the numbers though, just to double check that. That's just my perception of how it feels. It feels like when we're all 4 on the same side, we usually get that right. But yeah, co-main event. I mean, we pretty much had, me and Jerry were split. I said Volkov, Jerry said Ty, but like a lot of the same points were made. Like Volkov, I said the same thing. Volkov should win, but there's no reason Tai Tuivasa can't land that shot. Like, that is just too reasonable to see.
My gut says it's going to be Volkov who wins, but I don't know, something about picking Tuivasa in Australia, just like it seems like everything's kind of working itself out. He's lost 2 straight. I do have a question for you. Volkov wins. We know if Tuivasa wins, we'll see the shoey. Is Volkov going to do a shoey? Because I know they were at the press conference. Volkov wins, gets on the cage, rips a shoey.
I don't think so.
Yeah, a shot of vodka or something, maybe.
I don't think we get a Volkov shoe. It'd be funny if we did, though. I would appreciate it, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I highly doubt it, but who knows? We've seen crazier things in the UFC.
Yeah.
All right, let's just quickly roll through these last 2 fights on the main card. Then we'll swing it over to UFC Paris and recap last week's card because there were a couple big fights there. I'll just say the last 2 fights on this card, I've got Tyson Pedro and I've got Justin Tafa. So I think the Aussies sweep here. I just think in both matchups, they're better strikers. Tafa, very powerful, probably finds lane once. Pedro, really hope he beats the pleasure man, Anton Turkali, because I think that dude's a weirdo. But I think also from a skills perspective, I think Tyson's just much better.
Yeah, I agree. I just see being the same results. It'll be interesting because, I mean, last time, this is a remake up more or less of Justin Tafa and Austin Lane from a June 24th card, where it ended after about 29 seconds due to an accidental eye poke. Wonder if that has much involvement. We didn't get to see much there, so it's kind of hard to gauge how those two are competing with each other up until that 30-second mark. So, but I do think the Australians will get it done. Line down under will be partying.
Yeah. Is Austin Lane came over from BKFC? Or no, did he used to be, why does that name sound familiar? Or was it on an old Ultimate Fighter?
He was an NFL player.
Oh, was that why?
Yeah, he played. Austin Lane played for the Jags, and I believe he fought on Contender Series twice. The first time he fought on Contender Series, the first time he fought on Contenders, they matched him up with Greg Hardy, if I remember correctly. And Greg Hardy won the fight. It was NFL versus NFL. And then he got in again last year when they gave him another chance. So that may be why his name sounds familiar. He played for the Jags, and he likes to scream Duval whenever he gets a win. So,
oh my god,
if that appeals to anybody,
I think it must have been the Contender Series, and because if he fought Greg Hardy too, because I used to watch some of his early fights. But yeah, I mean, I had the same things. I don't really know much about the Anton dude, but I've seen Tyson Pedro fight before. He's all right. He's fine. And I don't know. I know Justin Tafa is not like a great fighter. I actually kind of like him in heavyweight for some reason, more than some of the other people. So I also took him.
Mm-hmm. Both those Tafa brothers are a little bit more heavyweight. So I think they get a lot of I think they appeal to a lot of people. That's why I like them, because it's like they at least have some technique to them, and they hold that power as well. So they're appealing a couple of dudes for the heavyweight division. All right. Let's swing this over to UFC Paris. Last week we had this card ended up being pretty good. One of the things Anthony and I talked about the day before was wanted to see what the crowd looked like, and the crowd absolutely showed out. Great crowd. Ended up being a great event. So I guess just to start, what did you guys make of the event? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the Paris crowd? Did you enjoy the fights? Jerry, we'll swing it over to you first.
I love the crowd. It was the same thing we kind of saw with the first UFC England card in the last couple of years when they went back. It's that soccer atmosphere that's just in an arena. Singing, cheering. It was full from the first fight to the last. Just great energy, great atmosphere. Not a surprise. All the French fighters more or less won. Have that big hometown support. Got off to a rough start with Zara Farid losing, but after that, it was kind of just there were entertaining fights, decent amount of decisions on the prelims, but the main card was great. Late knockout in the Gomes fight. Ozemir dominated and got a quick submission there. Saint Denis looked good. And Cyril Gahn did what he had to do. I was disappointed in Thug Rose, but honestly not that surprised with the way she was moving up and how good Firo has been.
Yeah, I agree. I thought, you know, the card was actually pretty fun to watch throughout, specifically the main, because I don't know how many of the prelims I ended up watching, but yeah, I was happy with it. Overall, I think I would say it delivered. I was gonna say because the UFC doesn't try sometimes on fight nights, but I will say whenever they go to a country or something, they are kind of, it makes it a little easier for them because the fighters from that country want to fight, so they can stack the card a little bit more. But yeah, I thought it delivered.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think my favorite thing, Jerry, you said this as well. They showed up for the first fight, and the energy was the same from fight one all the way through. So that's one of my favorite things about a card is when you have exciting prelims and the crowd shows up as well for those exciting prelims. And it adds a nice little spice that you rarely see. And then in the main event, we had Cyril Gahn win round 2, I believe it was, got the T3.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right, too.
He got that finish there over Sergey Spivak. This fight was an interesting one, stylistically, and then how it played out. So we'll swing it over to you this time, Anthony. Anthony, what are your thoughts on what we saw in the main event?
Well, this was, I guess, best case scenario for my view of picking Gahn, of like what I thought could happen. But I didn't think it was likely at all because I had bet on Gahn too, both like in a parlay and in like a prop of KO. So, I was saying that to say I didn't feel comfortable the whole time because I just think it's so much easier if Spivak gets that wrestling going. It's probably just a bad night from there. Like it's going to be hard for Gahn to come back from that, at least as what we've seen so far. But instead, he went. The fight went the other way, kind of like we talked about. He was able to keep him on the outside, just had him up. Just amazing body work from Gahn. Spivak losing some gas out of that tank right there, and then by the second round, and then I think I saw you. I think you tweeted or you put it in the channel. But who knows? You said something like, "Who knows that shelling up in the corner doesn't lead to takedowns." Yeah,
I said that in the chat.
In the chat, okay. And that's exactly what happened. Spivak didn't look like he wanted to be out there. After midway through that first round, maybe, and then he just shelled up. And Gahn's too talented of a fighter, especially the best probably there is at heavyweight at picking the shots like that. And then got the job done, got the finish. So.
It was pretty one-sided. I mean, you look at the significant strikes and just total strikes, 110 total, 109 significant for Cyril Gahn against the 11 Sergey Spivak. And it was pretty domination, I would say, from what I watched. Once he couldn't get the takedowns, couldn't get the pressure to get him, it seemed like his entire game plan kind of went out the window. And Gahn could sense that. He knew the crowd was behind him, and it kind of just kept moving forward. And that's the reason he's a number one contender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this fight was interesting to me because I don't know how much better Gan's takedown defense is. Like, the one thing I wanted to know is how much better is his wrestling. And I just felt like Spivak didn't even really put forward that effort. He took the one takedown attempt. I don't know whether I should credit Gan for having a good for sprawling out well, defending that shot, or I don't know whether I should say that Spivak took an awful takedown. Possibly both can be true. But there was a very ugly takedown, and Spivak didn't really fight, in my opinion. I felt like he was just there to not get hit too hard. And I don't really like, you know, talking down to fighters when they lose, and it kind of takes away from Gan's performance as well. But to me, it was like Spivak didn't really look too interested in being in a fight, and he was not very aggressive in getting that wrestling going. Like, he didn't even he took shot the one takedown. He didn't even shoot a Hail Mary takedown while getting pieced up. Like, he didn't even panic wrestle while he was getting beat. He just stood there and took it.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting fight in that regard. So I'm not sure if we see Gan against another wrestler, I'm not even sure how I would think about that fight. So to me, I'm still I'm perplexed as to what Spivak is as a fighter, and I don't have much more answers about Gan on the ground. On the feet, Gan obviously is an absolute sniper that just picks guys apart. And like you said, you can't stand like that against, Surreal Gan, because he'll hit you with the body shots, and the high guard does nothing when Gan is splitting it and punching around it. So it's like he was practically defenseless out there. So great performance from Gan on the feet. I just don't know how much Spivak was there in that fight. So kind of a downer view of that, but that's kind of what I saw. What do you guys want to see next from Gan? Because I think there are a couple options here. Jerry, we'll throw it over to you. Heavyweight division is kind of hard to pinpoint exactly right now because we do have that title fight with Jones and Stipe, and we don't know who wins, and we don't know who retires, whether it's 0, 1, or both. So heavyweight division can be hard to kind of project right now, but what would you like to see from Gan next?
I mean, as fun as it could be to see him fight Sergey Pavlovich, I don't see that happening. I think Pavlovich's next fight, one way or another, will be for the title, whether it's for the vacant UFC heavyweight title or against the winner of Stipe and John. I wouldn't mind seeing a Tom Aspinall-esque guy, maybe, because those two haven't fought each other. Be an England-France battle, which, those both countries really love each other, so there'd be a little extra tension there. If they do it in England or in Paris, it'd be great card. But at the same time, I want Aspinall to fight Curtis Blades. I think that'd be a good fight. Because I know they had he suffered that injury last time they fought. Well, maybe it gives it something fresh if it is Gone and Aspinall. So I wouldn't mind something like that. Because only other one I could think of maybe would be a Volkov or Tuivasa winner, but I think Gon proved he's levels ahead of Tuivasa, and I think it'd be similar with Gon or with Volkov.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't. That's a good. I guess because the main name that always pops out is Tom Aspinall, because he's someone that needs to start getting that title shot in the next fight or maybe two. But I don't mind that Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades running back, just kind of like you were saying, just because how that fight ended, so unfortunate. But I don't know who else not Blades, Gon would fight besides maybe Pavlovich. I guess it sounds like Pavlovich. Was that Gon's? Who did Gon fight before that last fight? Was it the loss to John, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
John, Tuivasa, and then Francis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, because I was gonna say, well, he is number one ranked for a reason, so maybe him and Pavlovich should fight. But I mean, I forgot he did just come off a loss to John, so I mean, it definitely is Pavlovich's turn to get that title shot. So I don't know. You can make some. I would say the only other thing you can do is maybe wait, but I think John and Stipe are probably retiring, so that's tough.
Yeah. The way that I kind of look at this is you've got Tom Aspinall, Surreal Gan, and Sergey Pavlovich, 2 fight each other and 1 fights for the title. I think with the current landscape right now, that's the route to go. I'd probably go Aspinall and Gan, and Pavlovich for the title would probably be my thought process. But John and Stipe both retire. All of a sudden, that changes a lot, and now you need two guys in for the title. And at that point, you're looking at a very different landscape. And the one fight that we haven't talked about that I would like to see is if Stipe loses and does not retire, I think Stipe and Gan is a fight that would really, really intrigue me. And then you could do Sergey Tom for a title or Sergey versus John for the title, depending on if John retires. So this is kind of will probably be a lot easier to pinpoint once that fight goes down and once we figure out who leaves their gloves in the octagon. But right now, those are kind of some of my thoughts right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was about to bring up that question is what happens if both retire and what do we see next? Because I do agree with you. I think it'll be one way or another. It'll be Pavlovich versus either Gane or Aspinall. Not sure which one it would be. I don't see why it wouldn't be maybe Gane and Pavlovich, the two guys ranked number one at the moment. Seems like the easiest thing. But Aspinall hasn't fought for the belt yet, so maybe something like that.
Yeah, it's if that's it's going to be hard to pick between Gane and Aspinall. I think if that's the situation they're put in because they're very close in my opinion and kind of the standings for a title shot. So, moving down to the co-main, Thug Rose Namajunas made her 125 debut, and she had it spoiled by Manon Fior. This fight was kind of one-sided. One judge had it 30-27. The other judge had it 29-28. First two rounds were pretty clear. Manon, what were your thoughts? And I don't remember who we started with last time. I believe we started with Jerry, so we'll throw it over to Anthony.
First of all, I actually really enjoyed that fight. I had some fun with it. I don't know how to give out my thoughts on the fight without just obviously the first thing is that breaking the finger. I believe on her right hand, so she couldn't throw. And that happened that was one of the first times where the broadcast put it out extremely fast, I thought. And I think that happened 30 seconds into the first round or something, maybe a minute. But obviously, I think that messed up her game plan, and she wasn't throwing rights as much, if at all, towards especially in that third. I think she was throwing a little bit in the first or second, but I think it just could have been a totally different fight because she was still connecting with Minion with her left and rocking her a little bit. But and we discussed too. This was a while ago with the Brandon Moreno when he was having hand issues of how I always thought it would just affect the striking, but maybe it does affect the wrestling because Thug Rose went 0 for 6 on takedowns. Maybe, it messes up with the hand placement and the grip strength and the ability. Although Fior is, huge, and she definitely looked a lot physically stronger than Rose. But besides the whole hand thing, I thought Fior fought a good fight. She looked good. She looked pretty cool with the unfortunate cut, blood rushing down her face. But overall, I think they both look good. I'm more excited to see Thug's next fight in this weight class. That intrigues me enough. And then I think Fior beating Rose in any fashion, regardless of maybe an issue with the hand, she looked great. And I think that's something, to be happy with. So I thought she had a good decision overall, a good decision win overall.
Yeah, I agree. Before I hop into that, I was just looking because I know tickets for UFC 295, which is that John Jones and Stipe fight, went on sale today. Looking at it, cheapest ticket, $917.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
That's for one ticket, though. So just wanted to put that out there. That's crazy. But this fight, kind of the points you were making, Anthony, it was that finger definitely had to have changed her plan. You're going to takedowns. It's hard to grab onto everything. It's hard to do that when your finger's pointing the wrong direction, hard to secure takedowns. I think that was noticeable. It was an entertaining fight to an extent. Furo did exactly what she needed to do to win. Got it done. Like you said, that cut made her look a little cooler doing it. But I'm more interested to see what happens next. And James and I were talking a little bit about it earlier in that women's flyweight division of what happens after next weekend? We have Grasso and Shevchenko too. Say Grasso wins and they don't need a trilogy. I wouldn't be surprised if, say, Shevchenko wins, they do run it back a third time, depending on how that fight goes and how we've seen all the rematches happen in the UFC recently. But then you have Ferro and Blanchfield and even Talia Santos to an extent, all right there and willing to and ready to fight for that belt. So don't know where she would go from there. It's all that kind of depends on what happens at UFC Noche next weekend. But for Rose, honestly, I wouldn't mind someone like, say, Lauren Murphy as the next fight. Kind of someone else still in that top 10, that in that new division for her. Maybe someone like that would be interesting to see her fight next.
Was that for Rose?
Yeah, that was for Rose.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just say that fight was a lot closer than I was expecting. I thought Mendon would dominate it a little bit more. So that's credit to Rose for that. Rose also, I could not tell if she got the knockdown in the third round. I struggled to tell if that was a slip or not, and I'm not really sure, to be honest. I haven't looked back either. But I had the point spread -3.5 for Manon Fiore, and 4 was the point spread, and Rose really made me sweat. So credit to her for that. So I like the idea of giving Rose a veteran in that division, or maybe I think there's a lot of fun fights for Rose in that division, whether it be Murphy, whether it be Macy Barber, Amanda Hebos, who's a little bit on the smaller side for that division, Caitlin Chukagian even. So I think there's options for Rose at 125. And then I want to put you guys on the hot seat, and I will put myself on there as well. Assuming the next title shot goes to Manon or Aaron, who do you give it to? I'll let you guys go first if either you have a passionate opinion on Manon or Aaron Blanchfield for the next shot.
I'll go just gut decision would say Aaron Blanchfield. I know she didn't look incredible against Talia Santos, but Santos is still one of the toughest people in that division, and she still did win unanimously by decision. I understand if Rowe gets it, but I'm leaning Blanchfield a little bit there. More maybe UFC's an American company. Maybe that puts a little extra bias into it, but I do think Blanchfield deserves it and probably will get it.
I think I was going to go Blanchfield as well. Although, I think they're two. You can't really go wrong. I think they're two good options. I think that division is actually kind of fun right now, which is cool. But kind of like you said, she didn't look the best in the last fight. But I think Santos is also like really good too. But overall, I'd probably say Blanchfield. But there's no right or wrong decision with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it as well. If I'm the decision maker, Aaron Blanchfield gets a shot, but if they give it to Manon Fiore, I won't complain too much. So let's just close out this UFC Paris segment with one final thought from everybody. Anywhere on the card, whether it's the main event, co-main, first prelim of the night, doesn't matter. Just give one concluding thought from the card as we close down the show today. Jerry, we'll throw it over to you first.
I like Saint Denis. I think he put on a great showing against Thiago Moises. He looks like one of those guys that could make a move up the rankings here shortly in the future. Also want to say love the Paris card. They'll have to go back there relatively soon. So that's my thoughts on it.
Well, with that kind of like James was saying, that fight was Rose made that fight a lot closer than I know some people expected. My one thought would be if she did it with that broken finger. So if that fight was that close with her losing one of her weapons, essentially, I'd be very interested to see her next fight, and she can almost do a resurgence at this weight class if that's the case.
Mm-hmm. And my final thought will be right with Morgan Charrier, and this probably isn't a surprise to Anthony or anyone who tuned in last week, but I ended the show last week with a nice little rant about why everyone should be excited for Morgan Charrier making his UFC debut. Explained why it was a little bit of a hometown cooked matchup for him, and he went out there, got the job done in the first round. So I think it's nice to see that. and got to shout him out again after we showed him some love last week. So I'll go Morgan Charrier, but I agree with both of your guys' points as well on Saint Denis and Rose. And that is the close for the Daily Show today. You got something, Jay?
No.
Oh, my bad. I thought you put up your hand. That's the close for the Daily Show today. Covered UFC 293, covered UFC Paris. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Make sure you read the website, vendettasportsmedia.com. All our UFC content is on there, previews, best bets, news, Tai Tuivasa film study on the main YouTube channel, Vendetta Sports Media. So make sure you go and check out all that content as well. But thank you to everyone who tuned in this week. And make sure you tune in next week for UFC Friday as we recap 293 and look forward to UFC Noche.